Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Classics, Intergalactic Skeletor. Straight from his appearance in the New Adventures of He-Man comes the latest variant of the main villain, and one that I have been looking forward to for quite some time. Skeletor comes in the standard Masters Classics blister card, complete with the Space Mutants logo sticker on the front of the box to show his alignment. The back shows off a selection of other figures in the Classics line, and even presents us with a brand new bio for Skeletor. Say what you will about the New Adventures figures, but I've always rather liked Skeletor's design in that line. Sure, it was different than his iconic look with the purple armor and hood, but I always liked the idea that Skeletor had to attach cybernetic parts to himself in order to essentially keep himself alive, as was presented to us in the New Adventures mini-comics. And all of those cybernetic details translate wonderfully in this newer, more detailed sculpting style of the Classics line. All over his arms and his legs, you can see little tubes and other cybernetic bits and pieces worked into the sculpt. All of those parts are even painted in a more metallic blue, so they really stand out from the flat blue of his skin tone. To fit right along with the new look, he's also sporting larger, more robotic-looking purple boots, as well as gloves that have a much more techno feel to them. Just like with the blue, the dark purple painted areas also have some metallic purple worked in to help the sculpted details really pop. He's sporting a new metallic silver loincloth piece, complete with a pinkish purple belt with a skull buckle right there in the center. Draped over his shoulders and flowing down his back is a large cape, done in that same pinkish purple color, complete with matching skulls attaching the cape to his chest armor. Now, the torso is done similar to all of the armor that we've seen in this line so far. While this version of Skeletor isn't really wearing full body armor, but rather just has an armor plate with many cybernetic parts just attached to his skin, the Classics figure was still done in that standard style of sculpting all of those detail as an armor piece, and then putting it over the main buck. This works okay, but as a result, it is a little bulky. In addition, you can see the stomach of the buck underneath poking out in many poses, so Skeletor is almost always showing his belly button where he really shouldn't be. Now, the sculpt of that armor is really great, with the armor plate having some awesome cybernetic type details worked in that even forms the shape of a skull. And while his cape is permanently attached to that armor, lifting it up reveals even more awesome sculpted details running up his back. And then we come to the new head sculpt on this figure. This might be one of the most menacing Skeletor heads we've seen yet. The teeth are much more crooked and gangly looking, and the shape of the orbital sockets just seem pointier and more angry. The insides of those eye sockets are painted purple, with red glowing eyeballs shining out. It's also a much lighter shade of yellow. It's almost white, which actually matches with the classic New Adventures toy. On top of his head is his helmet, which is done in a shiny gunmetal color. It's got some really great sculpted details of its own, and one of my favorite features, it's removable. Popping the helmet off reveals more of those cybernetic features running up the back of Skeletor's head, which again matches up to what we saw on the vintage toy. And then of course that helmet can easily fit right back on, and it's nice and snug. Alright guys, let's go ahead, take a closer look here at the New Adventures Skeletor. We'll go ahead and start by running down the articulation on this guy. First of all, there's that helmet. Pop that off, so we'll get that out of the way just so I can show you. The head is able to turn left, right, up, and down. That doesn't actually hinder the movement at all. I just took the helmet off to kind of make it a little easier to grip it. So head can turn left and right. You can still get a little bit of up and down movement there. Still got the ball joints at the shoulder, so the arms can go outwards. They can move forwards, backwards. You got your swivels at the bicep there. You got your standard joint at the elbow, as well as swivel at the glove cut for the wrist there. So it's the whole glove that turns, not just the hand itself. You've still got the ab crunch articulation, which still functions well. It's underneath the armor, of course, that he's wearing. And then you got the swivel at the waist there. Legs can go outwards very nicely. They can go forwards nicely, so you can get a good sitting pose, can fit in a vehicle, anything like that. You just got that cape to worry about back there. Got the swivels, of course, at the thigh cut. Got your standard joints at the knees. And then there's no actual swivels below that because of the sculpt of the boot. But then we got just our regular ankle articulation, so the foot can move forward and backward. It's nice and tight on this guy, so I don't have any problems with him toppling over because of weak ankles. So one thing really weird that I want to point out first of all, the hands on this figure are made of a really soft kind of gummy plastic. As you can see, it's very easy to kind of flex the hands around. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I would assume it's just because the hands were put in a mold with gummy or plastic. It's not too bad, but that is going to have a little bit of an effect on him gripping onto the weapon. He can hold his staff fine, but you're going to notice it's not a very tight grip, not like what we're used to seeing with the more solid plastics that are usually used on the hands. So then the other thing, when I talked about how the armor here, it's just a full torso armor over a regular buck. Now, of course, on the vintage Skeletor figure, this was all just part of his sculpt because this was like all basically embedded into his skin with all the cybernetic parts. It wasn't armor that he's wearing. But in order to avoid having to sculpt a brand new buck, Mattel opted to just make it as an armor piece that fits over the figure, and it works fine. Makes it a little bit bulky, but let me go ahead and show you that. Let me pop the head off here first. You'll notice it's one of those armor bucks that goes all the way up the neck on the back. This is good since Skeletor has some extra sculpted details that go up the neck there, so it covers it all the way up. Also, that cape, it's not removable. It's attached to that armor piece up here in the front and even up on the shoulders, so you can't pop that cape off if you don't want to, or if you want to. But on the back there, you'll notice it's got the standard pegs, just like your regular armor would, so you can just kind of pop that off if you want to, and underneath that, he's got the standard buck, just like we see with all of the other Classics figures. For an accessory, Skeletor includes his New Adventure style Havoc staff. The whole staff is molded in the same gunmetal color as his helmet, and it doesn't have any other painted details. But the sculpt on this is terrific, perfectly updating that vintage accessory. He can hold it in either hand, and you can even get some good two-handed poses. But it is worth noting that because of those gummy hands, he doesn't get as tight of a grip as I'd like, and he does tend to drop the staff easily in some of those poses. Now, as a bonus, the second accessory isn't even for the Skeletor. It's a battle-damaged head to fit on your Faker figure, revealing a robotic skull underneath. It's definitely got a Terminator vibe to it, but this is something that fans have wanted to see for a long time, so it's cool to finally have this as a display option. Alright guys, it's comparison time. Here's a look at the new Intergalactic Skeletor figure standing alongside his vintage counterpart. It's pretty amazing to see how the Horseman took the design of the original and updated it with such an amazing sculpt. So there you go guys, a look at the new Intergalactic Skeletor figure from the Masters of the Universe Classics line. He has a few minor issues, being the gummy hands and that bulky torso armor, but otherwise, this figure's pretty amazing. Like I said, I've been anxiously awaiting this variant for a long time, and I am not disappointed with him. The sculpt is just so amazing on this guy, and he actually looks like quite the serious threat to pit up against our New Adventures version of He-Man. Intergalactic Skeletor is part of the 2014 Club Eternia subscription, and will be available on MattyCollector.com in July. Until next time,
Sculpt.